I have an idea.
What's your idea, Jordan?
Why does everybody hate their kids?
I hate everybody's kids.
Well, yeah, I'm not talking about everybody else's kids.
I hate all of their kids. I love
Yeah,
my
yeah,
kids.
yeah.
Your kids? Hate them.
Oh, man.
No, they're good.
I like them.
They're good.
Any thoughts?
Oh, you wanted me to answer the question.
Well, I mean...
Respond to
I guess
the
you don't
prompt.
have to, but...
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons that people don't like their kids. Kids are hard.
Why does it feel like people our age don't seem to like their kids at all?
I think
Our
that-
age is 33. Our
Oh.
children are between 7 and 18 months. Between the
I
two
will
of
make
us.
this argument.
Actually, is Bennett 7? He's not
Bennett
7
is 7 in about a month.
yet. Yeah, right.
So he's an old 6.
As they say.
As they say. I will make the argument that I think that people have been hating their kids longer, but there's kind of this weird. I do think it's like more in vogue to like roll your eyes and complain about your kids now than it used to be. But I also think there's kind of this place where I think that we've made our kids kind of useless things. Like they're actually just burdensome more so than I think they may have been at other points in time because we're crappy parents. Like I think we like make children harder than they need to be.
Right.
And then we complain about them when they are doing what we kind of taught them to do and being who we kind of teach them to be.
Well, even on just that small, like a small example that relates to what you just said is, you know, we had this friend, and I've said this to you a lot probably, but they had an 18-month-old, and they were like, oh my gosh, like my kid wants to watch Frozen 2 like 4 times a day. It's crazy. It's just like so annoying. I'm like, how do they know that Frozen 2 exists? They're 18 months old. Nobody told them that. You
I told
showed it
them.
to-
I break into every house and tell every 3-year-old about Frozen 2.
Have you heard about the continuation of Anna and Elsa's epic adventure through the snowlands of friggin' Arendelle and beyond?
Let me tell you an inspiring tale of
You're outside their
familial
window.
bond and magic.
You're outside their window.
Look out the window
What's
and
that voice? I hear it.
there's a whisper in my ear.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
So
continue.
that's just to your point, though. I was like, there are a lot of these things where it's not really fair to blame your kids for sucking when they're well,
you just
maybe
teach
ever,
them to
but
suck.
like when they're really young in particular, it's like, of course they're dumb or whatever. Like Isley, our middle kid, you know Isley.
I've met her.
She is unbelievably creative in her destruction, and in ways that like it's. I mean, I do get upset, but it's like I hadn't explicitly told you not to crawl into your brother's crib and poop in it, or to take all the dolls out of your sister's room, put them in your bed, and then completely lather them head to toe in shampoo. I didn't say it. To be fair, I didn't
I
suggest
never set the boundary.
not doing those things.
But if you did it, it only would have sounded like a good idea.
She'd be like, I didn't know this was possible. But but there is a lot of like, I don't think people take the time. So my mom claims that she always had her like main parenting goal for a long time was to make other people not hate us. I actually think that's a pretty good way to go about it, which is like, because you're other people or
I am
you're
other
people.
I am a person.
I just mean like with your own kids, how do you make them not?
Lizard person pulling at their collar. Yes, I am human.
I am person. What's under there? But just like this kind of, like there are ways to sort of fashion your kids into more functional kind of kids that you actually enjoy being around. And part of that starts with, I think, not just assuming that they're a burden immediately. Mm-hmm. And I do think Frozen 2 example sort of points to the like, to me, there are a lot of parents that treat, we were talking about screen time a lot recently, where it's like you're sort of just using that because you just don't want to deal with your kids, and so you just throw them at Frozen 2 and hope there's no one here. Why does my dog bark all the time? My dog, for example, I hate now. Sorry, that's going to get me canceled. But it's just like I didn't train her right, and now she's really annoying. So I used to love her, then we moved.
We all told him he was doing it, and he didn't believe us.
Yeah, well, we used to live on a vineyard. We lived in a crap hole, but she had 50 acres to run on, so we didn't bother to train her, and now I wish we had. Because we don't live on a vineyard anymore. Also, on that vineyard, I used to have 50 acres to drive my go-kart, and then Devin drove it one time right by the mansion, and they got mad at us, and I was never allowed to drive my go-kart ever again. You ended that dream for me.
I did, on purpose.
That beautiful dream.
I drove past the mansion firing bottle rockets.
Yes. And saying, eat the rich.
And they were like, I don't know how I feel about this.
But all I was going to say is, like, I think people... It feels like modern parenting feels like a lot of... how do I basically... not spend as little time with these annoying kids as possible, sort of.
I agree.
So sometimes it becomes daycare, and I realize that sometimes that's necessary. Like, obviously your kids go to daycare, and they have. And
But
they
I do
haven't.
it to get rid of them because they're annoying.
Well, yeah.
So.
Your kids are annoying. I'm talking about everybody else's kids. No,
I
but
have
I mean,
a very good reason to
sometimes
lock
you
them
have to
away.
do that. It is what it is. But I think the problem is that, you know, we'll have friends who have said, like, they'll potty train him, or they'll teach him how to nap, or whatever, and you kind of just end up in these scenarios where you offload so much of it that anything that you have to do at that point feels burdensome.
Yeah.
As opposed to potentially going into it being like, I'm in control of all this stuff, I'm helping shape all these things. Plus, in theory, like, it's kind of fun. It's not all fun.
I derive a great deal of joy out of shaping my children. Like, I think it is, like, legitimately, I really, really like it. And I think that there's a lot of directions I'm going to go with this, because I don't know if I've mentioned that I'm a counselor. This stuff gets brought up all the time. But there's this piece of it that I tell people when it comes to kids, is that, like, in counseling we talk about a lot about, like, our biological just kind of mechanisms that, when we're not aware of what our body and our brains are doing, we kind of just roll with what we kind of default into.
Okay.
And in kids, if you understand, like, how they operate, then it's really easy to see how kids get annoying really fast if you're not, like, meeting the needs that they have, or, like,
Sure.
specifically, like, kind of taking advantage of some of the things that are annoying if you don't actually, like, know what they're doing. So there's, like, this piece of it that I talk about a lot is screen time, right? Like, the reason kids get, like, super sucked into screens is because at the age where most people start plopping their kids in front of a screen, which is like 2 to 3 years old, it's because they have this, like, significant need for sensory input. Like, their brains are, like, exploding with desire to, like, process information. And so they get kind of needy because they want to be stimulated. And so they go to this person who is, like, their number one source of, like, if I ask you for something, you provide it. And so they request things, or they'll go and get into trouble. They won't even go to you. They'll go and they'll pull something off a shelf and make a mess because they like the way it sounds, and they like the colors, and they like just making messes because it's cool. For their, little brains. We're like, oh, that's annoying. Here's a screen. Throw them in front of a screen. And then they're like, oh, well, this is literally the most sensory rich thing I could ever do. It's like constant moving color sounds. I control it. Like, it's just everything about it. It, like, lights up all of the parts of a little kid's brain that they're trying to light up. And then you, like, create a little screen addict, because it's just kind of like nothing tops that. There's nothing that's going to do for them what that is doing. And then it's like, well, when we try to pull them off a screen, then they freak out and they're like, oh, well, this is burdensome and I don't like this. So let's go back to the thing that I used when they were doing something that was even less burdensome than them screaming at me.
Right.
And so you just create these little monsters.
Well, and even things like sleep, like not understanding the importance of getting your kid to sleep and like sleep training, like little things that are tough. Like obviously you've had to do it more times than me because your cycle gets broken a little bit. But like with each of our kids, you know, you're waking up 5-6 times a night to rock them back to sleep or give them more milk or whatever when they're like 5-6 months old. And then you realize if you just like suck it up for 3 nights and let them cry it out or whatever, then suddenly they sleep perfectly forever, and suddenly you can sleep again, and you're happier, and the kid's happier because everybody slept more, and like suddenly everything becomes great. As opposed to, like we've had friends whose kids like they're like, I mean, they just don't go to sleep until 11 p.m. or whatever, and I'm like, well, then you just leave them in there. They'll fall asleep, and it gets better so fast. It's really hard. I remember when we did it with our oldest, we were like crying and like, we're torturing our daughter. And then 2 nights later, she just slept all the way through the night. We're like, we should torture all of our children.
We should torture every child we
I can't
see.
believe we haven't been torturing our children harder. But it's, yeah, I just think, yeah, that's sort of like another biological thing. And, you know, just like caring about naps when that is appropriate for kids, and just sort of prioritizing things like sleep so that, because that's the weird thing about kids, right, is that if they're tired, they act like they're jacked up on Mountain Dew and they're going insane. And actually, Anna's mom was a teacher for a long time. My wife's mom was a teacher for a long time. And there was like this one kid that had a Mountain Dew every day at school, like a second grader. And it actually calmed him down. I mean, it's like Ritalin or whatever. Like it's actually an upper that calms you down, because when you're so tired or so whatever, it calmed him down because it
stimulates your brain.
Yeah, it actually brought him up to like a normal level instead of him being like, I'm tired, which makes me insane. Then it's like, I'm more normal because I'm all jacked up on Mountain Dew. Little things like that. But I actually another thing I wanted to point out is what you said really early on, which is there definitely is a culture of like, oh my God, it's like so honest to say how much I hate my shitty little children. And it's like, to some degree, okay. Like, I think it's not a problem to share
That it's hard.
Because it's totally hard. I mean, I don't want to downplay that. And it's definitely even harder if you're like both parents are working, or you're one parent and you're working, or whatever.
Or some children are challenging.
Yeah.
There are just children with challenging dispositions.
But that said, I think it too often gets framed in a sort of unhelpful, either sort of semi-sarcastic, where it's just like, oh, my kids are terrible. And you're like, ha ha ha, all kids are terrible. And you're like, yep, well, anyway, I'm going to make them watch Frozen until we all throw up. Or usually just that kind of like, I mean, we have these friends who are just like, man, they're like borderline, I hate this kid. They make me so angry. And they're not even being haha about it. And you're like, well, don't. I don't know. Like, it's weird they just sort of live in that. And they're like, I'm just being honest. I'm like, okay, well, he's 2. Like, suck it up. You know, you're going to ruin this kid's life.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then ruin so many more lives because you ruined that child's life.
Yeah. That's just...
Yeah. Because I just
wear a condom, and I know that's ironic because you've never done it. But...
I don't know what it's like.
Yeah.
No, I feel really strongly about it because I do understand, both through personal experience and vicarious experiences, speaking to lots of people, that like being a parent is challenging, and it's like, yeah, it is, and you're the grown up in the room, dude. So like, figure it out. And there's resources to figure it out. Like but you do, at the end of the day, you can't throw your hands up and be like, this is too hard. And there are things in life where we can just say, this isn't for me. Like, I will not pursue this any further. I bought, I went and I bought a smoker and I smoked a couple things and this is a lot of work. I'm kind of,
Just
I'm gonna
being
wrap this
honest
up.
with my experience with the smoker.
Yeah, like, I'll just wrap this up. But, like, you have a kid and they're 3, you don't get to be like, I think I'm kind of done with it. And so there is this piece of it where it's like, we got to figure this out. Which then I think we start tapping into some societal issues of, I think that we don't long suffer well as people anymore. Like, I think we're just really, one of the things I talk to people about all the time is that, like, we have created such an intense kind of like almost drive reduction for discomfort. It's like discomfort's the enemy. And so if we're experiencing discomfort, that means we're doing something wrong or we're in the wrong place. Like, people should just feel comfortable. And I do think that that's like a relatively modern kind of view. And I do think that that's part of why we dislike our kids so much more now and are so much more vocal about it. Is it's like, I think back in, the good old days, it was just like, well, some things just suck. Like, we just have to be, like, you just have to work hard and things hurt. But, now I have a sandwich and that's good. Or like, oh, like, kids are hard, but like, I need my kids to grow up to be capable people because they help me do my jobs. And so like, there's kind of this piece of it where, I can't remember who said it. Somebody said it, but like, we're building a world we're not built for. So it's like, there was kind of this time where everything was, you needed more people. And so you would be like, well, I'm so vested in creating kids because it's like, well, I want to have, we want them to be good people, but we need them to be functional human beings because we need more hands. And so now we don't really need as many hands. And so kids are just like a passion project for people. It's just like, I'm just really into kids and them existing, but we don't really need them the same way, or we don't have the perceived need of it. And so I do think a lot of people just kind of are like, well, this is hard and I don't want to do it. Like, it's just uncomfortable.
But I also think alternatively, there are people that put so much pressure and they sort of put difficulty into it in a way that isn't required. So like even things like, and there's somebody I know who is a little bit like this. I might actually listen to this, but whatever. Basically, there are things. There's an entire industry around suggesting that your kids are unable to handle anything, and so like it's like butt wipe warmers or just like there are things that make it harder on you. We have a friend who anyway, I just have a lot of friends that put a lot of extra effort into it, and I think it burns them out really quick because they're like, having a kid's impossible. You have to do all these insane things that, I don't know, parents.
It's like, I didn't remember to turn the butt wipe warmer on 30 minutes before they pooped, and now I'm stuck here with cold wipes. And who could do this?
And it's like, there's also just sort of misinformation to the opposite end, which is like, it's actually... It is the hardest thing in the world, and you have to do a million things to do it right. But they sort of get bogged down into the details of the butt warmers or the certain types of rigid schedules or diets or whatever. And then I think it's like our friend Jimmy. There's just a pendulum swing that happens where they're like, I'm doing everything I can. I'm super hardcore. I'm all in. And then I get tired in 6 months. I'm like, no.
Parachuting Percocets.
Yeah, then they're parachuting Percocets in my friggin' room when I'm off at a Guster concert, and I come home and there's vomit everywhere. Nobody's gonna get that except Kevin, friend of the pod. And it's just I think there's that too, where it's like we don't approach it very reasonably. We are either like, oh my god, I can't believe I have this kid. It's like the most burdensome thing in the world, or I have this kid, and it's going to be the most burdensome thing in the world, but like it's all about my raw effort and making sure I have all the right things. If I screw up anywhere, then it's over. And I think, I say this to parents all the time. I'm like, for the first, well, maybe forever, I was like, the main thing, and I say this to dads especially because I think they're less inclined to be naturally good at it, but it's just kind of like, I think babies can just smell fear.
Like bees.
And if you're sitting there trying to rock your kid to sleep and they're crying and you get
distressed,
pissy, it's going to make it worse. It's going to be cyclical. The kid's not going to feel relaxed. So you just have to accept that you need to project. It's a baby. It'll be fine. Confidence. And I think things work better. And I think when you're making most decisions, trying to also keep in mind that they're like a relational person that you're kind of growing, and sort of trying to work within that too, like trying to learn how to play with them some. And I don't know. I think there's both too much pressure and not enough pressure, and probably just no guidance in a lot of ways. And I think there's definitely something that's sort of lost in the, like, you used to have 3 or 4 generations living in the same. There's like parents that have done it before, but not only just that, there's also more people to help you when you need to tap out, and not have to tap out and be like, and now the kid's screwed and going to watch Frozen 2 all day. You can tap out and be like, just hang out with your grandpa for a little bit.
That's one of my favorite things about having more than one kid that I have recently celebrated a lot more is, like, I can get tired and then be like, well, go play with your sister.
Right.
And then they'll just go play for like 2 hours, and there will be no screens and nothing will happen. And I'm like, I could be doing anything right now. Like, they're legitimately just on autopilot. But then once again, it's something that you have to cultivate, because if you don't play with them and teach them to play well, and then you teach them that being on screens is better, like, children don't just, I mean, they do actually naturally do this, but also if they don't have any peers or anyone to do it with kind of from the get-go, or if you shut it down too much, they stop trying to do it. But, like, they just go entertain themselves, and they kind of just need, like, at least one other person who's just going to do that with them at a certain point, where it's like they'll just kind of spin each other up and go for a while. And if they don't do that, like, a lot of kids just will play by themselves if you teach them how to play by themselves. And there's just kind of this piece of it where it's like, it's just so heavily rooted in we make it so much harder than it needs to be.
Well, I think so. I was gonna say, my wife does a really good job. She's mostly stay at home, so that, you know, not everybody can do that, but she does a really good job of ignoring the kids. Not literally, but, like, she will be like, I have things I'm gonna do today. I'm gonna make dinner. I'm gonna clean the dishes. I'm gonna whatever. And the kids basically they're basically invited to either help with that or go entertain yourself for a little bit. Like, mom's not here just like, what do you need? What do you need? Do you want an orange? Do you want to play something? What are we doing? What are we doing? Because that'll also burn her out. And it's helpful for her to be like, I've accomplished something today, not just nurturing the kids or whatever. And so I think, kids need to be ignored a little bit too, but not, ideally not just driven straight to a screen or like literally neglected or whatever.
Well, and there's a piece of it too, when you're ignoring your kids, it's this idea of you're not actively facilitating everything they're doing, but you are keyed into what they're doing.
Yeah, right.
Because it's like I think about this all the time, where everybody is so blown away that our kids get their own water in our house. Like, they'll come up and say, I'm thirsty. And every time I'm like, you know where the cups are? Go for it. And there is a part of it where we did have to intentionally create a system that our kids could operate in. Like, our cups are low enough so they're not climbing on shelves and stuff. But, like, there's, like, this piece of it where we taught our kids how to be self-sufficient, so that when we ignore them, they're not just, like, staring at a wall or like, okay, the only thing I can do is get on the screens. It's, they know where their toys are, and they know how to feed themselves certain things. And they know, like, when, going back to the, do you want an orange? There's people I'll go over and they're like constantly like, well, are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Are you this? Are you that? Your kids are never going to know if they're hungry or thirsty if you're constantly asking them how they feel and anticipating their needs.
Sure.
Versus when my kids come up to me and they're like a mess, I'm like, okay, well, pay attention to your body. Does your mouth feel dry? Are you hungry? Like, what's happening right now? And I, like, make them sit for a second and figure it out. And they're like, oh, I'm hungry. And I'm like, good, well, go get an orange, you little idiot. Like, it's right there. And, like, they'll go over and I'll be like, okay, like, let me know if you need any help with it. And then I just move on. And, you know, sometimes my child will gnaw on an orange rind for a second to try to get it open. And, you know, they're not going to die if they do that. So but eventually they kind of learn how to do stuff on their own. So now it's like I can sit and be making dinner or cleaning or doing whatever, and my kids will get their own water and chew on orange peels, and it's great.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
everybody
right.
wins there. But it's like this piece of it that you have to invest in teaching your kids to be kind of self-sufficient and resilient, or else they will never stop looking to you to do things for them, either entertain them or feed them or water them. Or like, I love that my middle child, she has much higher needs for resting because she gets really emotionally hot and then like has a trouble regulating it. She'll go and lay down and take a nap on her own, and it's not a punishment. It's like we taught her that like when you get really overwhelmed, like sometimes laying down for a minute can help. And she's like, either the two things she does is I need to have alone time, and she'll go to her room and she'll flip through a book. Sometimes she'll pass out, sometimes she'll play, whatever, but she usually comes back in a better mood. Or we taught her to push her reset button, and she just pokes her belly button and then moves on. And it's like, and everybody's like, so, because she is, I tell people she's equal parts sugar and vinegar. It's just kind of like, she's really, really sweet, and then she's like a lot. But like everybody's like, oh, like she's so quick to just kind of improve her mood when she gets really sour. And it's just kind of like, well, yeah, you taught her how to do it, and then you give her the space to do it.
Yeah.
And she sees that it works, and then it's like, oh. And it's like, and I work less doing it that way. Like, it's so much easier. Or even I think a lot about the difference between how me and my wife do certain things, where it's like her groove that she's created with the kids sometimes is so much easier than what I've made, or sometimes what I do is so much easier. And it's just strictly rooted in like who did a better job of teaching our kids to be sufficient through a process.
Sure.
Like the bedtime routine. I love my wife dearly, but she's so bad at it. It's just like, it's horrifying how bad she is at getting our kids from the dinner table to their beds.
Yeah.
I've never met a person who struggled so much while trying so hard.
Right.
Specifically, she is so invested in making it work, and it just doesn't.
Yeah.
And then but then for me, it's like I can get our kids from the dinner table to their beds, showered, teeth brushed, books read, them head on the pillow going to sleep in like less than 30 minutes sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's just like, but it's strictly rooted in the fact that I don't have to ask them to do things. Like whatever routine we've created, like my older child will go get in the shower without me saying anything, and then he, like, while he's in the shower, I'm helping my middle child learn how to brush their teeth while I'm brushing the third one's teeth, and then when the older one gets out, the second one gets in, and they just kind of like roll through it because they know what to expect and they know how it works.
Right.
And then we're all kind of done, and it was really exhausting to teach them to do that
Sure.
for a week or two. And now it's so easy. It's the easiest thing in the world.
Well, I think you're hitting on a point there, which is like, I do think sort of this 0 to 5, but even more really 2 to 5 is really just kind of this critical time. Like there's a thing that it's hard to recognize. And they pointed this out in like an Atlantic article semi-recently, but it's like, you need to understand that your kids being young and useless and difficult, quote unquote, is like a really small window, ultimately. Mm-hmm. Like by the time they're in school, like, Bennett's a little older than Swede, my oldest, but Swede's about to go into kindergarten. And it's like, the kid can do almost anything already. Like she obviously is like potty trained and stuff, but yeah, she can get her own food. She does her own baths. She can do anything. And it's like, you need to have, I think it really helps to, and whatever, maybe we'll do this podcast in 10 years and be like, oh, we didn't know the teenagers
wrong.
Yeah. Oh, they're so horrible. They're all on cocaine. But
I want to buy some death sticks.
I don't want to sell you death sticks. I feel like now is sort of the time to invest, but I think it's hard because people sort of they're like, I can't believe I'm going to have a useless 3-year-old who shits their pants for 18 years. And you're like, well, it's not. It's like for the next 2 at most. And to your point, there are even things you can make easier. Like having more kids makes it easier, I think,
There's a tipping point.
there are things that are harder, and whatever. But we see Anna's brother has 5 kids. And speaking of orange peels, yesterday he was just all the cousins hung out, which is like I think 14 kids on my wife's side, and he just had an orange and was like just biting into it, just eating the whole thing. I was like, the youngest, right? And he's like, yeah, he'll live. Yeah, because he's 2, the oldest is 12, and it's like, but they make it work with 5 kids. They all sort of take care of each other, and I do think it helps kids. I think part of my thought process in all of this is one of the things that's helpful for kids, for me as a parent having kids, and one of the things that's helpful, I think, for the kids themselves is everybody's starting to realize that they're not the center of everything. And getting outside of your head a little bit is really beneficial to you, but it's also beneficial to teach your kids that. And like a thing that we try and do, just my wife and I, is intentional, obviously date nights, which is more infrequent than we'd like, but also even just doing things where we'll just like give each other a hug on the couch and be like, no one else is allowed. And all the kids are like, "Wah! What do you mean?" But they get to, or I'll say things like, "There's nobody I love in the world more than you, except Mom." And she'll be like, all right. And just trying to like, I don't know, create some kind of like, trying to not build the world too much around them, because I think it's hard for you too to try and maintain that. Anyway, I really get bummed out, and I suppose the other part of this is I wish it was easier to find communities of people that cared about their kids. Right. Because I think that would make your life easier, not in like a saccharine, like they're a TikTok momfluencer who has an answer to every single thing, and so you're like, well, they're not going to understand what I'm going through, but just kind of like, let's all just assume that we love and like our kids. Mm-hmm. And then when challenges arise, we can approach them more honestly rather than what it feels like unprompted. We have these friends that are like, who sucks ass? My 2-year-old. And you're like, do you want me to speak into that? Or are you just telling me this because...
Are you looking for validation?
Yeah, because I like mine. I'm like, sure, I don't like your kid, but it's not my job.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, so we moved into a new house like 2 years ago, and hands down, my favorite thing about moving into that new house is that all of our like immediate neighbors like their kids.
That's cool.
And so it like, there's like this piece of it where one of the things I didn't realize is when I see someone really likes their kids, I like immediately trust them with my kids more. Where it's like, not just like they like their kids and they like constantly are trying to meet their kids' needs. Yeah. But like the parents that when I'm watching them, it's like, oh, you like admire your kids. Like you respect your kids, and you like, you're not just kind of like constantly trying to make them feel good, but you like will set a limit with your kid and then comfort them when they're frustrated about that limit. Or you'll be like, hey, like one of my favorite things is that I like one of our neighbors, I'll like come in and their kids will be like, I'm hungry. And they like just kind of gesture to the kitchen, and their kids like will go and make a bowl of cereal or whatever. Yeah. But then the kids like come and sit down and talk to you. And it's like, there's just like this piece of it where it's like, oh, the kids in the house aren't these like little burdens that are running around where they're like, oh, let me go get their cereal, and then like slam it on the table and be like, okay, just don't make any noise. Like put an iPad in front of them. Like I get really sad when I go to like friends' houses and they'll make food for their kid and then just kind of like put the kid in a corner with an iPad, and you're like, but they're a little person too, and they could be part of this in some ways. Like, but like most of the people that are in our like immediate vicinity, it's like their kids are like part of the group, and it's cool. Like in a different way at times, but it's like, it's their kids will watch our kids will go play with their kids. Like, and there's like this kind of idea of like between, this like 3-4 house area, it's like, well, between the kids being kids that are being really well raised, that are like able to look after and play with and like
Yeah.
engage with other kids really well, and then the parents being like good caring parents. It's like, well, we've built this nice little pocket community that makes parenting, I think, really easy in a lot of ways, because
Yeah.
I don't worry about where my kids are going or what they're doing if they go to those couple of places, because I know that they're going to like be cared for, but I also know they're not going to be like picking up these like habits of like, well, why does this person just watch Frozen for 20 hours a day? It's like, well, they're going to go over there and they're going to go dig in the dirt in this person's backyard. And,
Yeah.
or if they fall off a bike, like like the other parent will text me and be like, well, you know, do you need them to come home? And I'll be like, are they good? And it's like, yeah. And it's like, okay, I trust you. And you're just
Yeah.
going to move on. It's
Well-
nice. It's a nice thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Yeah, our version of that mostly is Anna's siblings. Again, the 14 kids. They, you know, all those kids are pretty good kids, and most of them are older, and so they do a good job of that. But yeah, the negative version of that is we know a couple of couples like just weird stuff, like especially with our oldest, we are pretty comfortable. Like, for example, at church, she can go to the bathroom by herself. But if one of the like parents that we know sees her out there, they're like, "What are you doing? You could die out here. Go back inside." And she's like very confused because she's like, why is this adult flipping out right now? Like, my mom just said. And it's weird that they would just assume, like, if a kid's in the hall, that means they're, you know, I guess that's part of it too. It's like, it's anarchy. You can't let kids do things.
Yeah.
And it's, or they'll like berate our kids for maybe weird specific rules that they have at their house, which maybe that's more whatever. We need to understand what their rules are or whatever. But the approach feels like usually a lot less of, yeah, you did something you didn't know. Let me just correct you on that real quick, and then let's go on with our life. And more like, my job in life is to thwart all of these children who are trying to undermine me. I mean, there's like a million different flavors of how this comes out. Too permissive, way too authoritarian, and are like, my job is I am the dictator of this house, and everybody is trying to usurp my reign by, I don't know, coloring on things they shouldn't, or wearing shoes inside the house. And so it's my job to crack down, which is also not very fun for kids. And it's a great way to, if you treat your kids like French resistors in Paris during Nazi occupation, then probably not going to build a great relationship with them. We did a parenting class with Anna's parents, and one of the things they said was rules without relationship breeds rebellion, or something. And they're like, you can have rules, you can force rules, of course, but if you're not relating to your kids, eventually all of that will erode, and it doesn't matter what your punishments are. They just don't give a shit anymore. And I think about that a lot, although they also broke it up into like from 0 to 2, nothing matters, just keep them alive, try not to make them to watch Frozen all day. But then from like 2 to 5, the main goal, you're just trying to teach them that you're in charge, and not just in like a kick their ass way, but in like a, hey,
If I say it's going to happen, it happens.
yeah, right. Like you become their god, where it's like, just so you know, we're going to the pool later, and then you go to the pool later, and they're like, whoa, mom said that we were going to the pool, and now we're at the pool. So that if they're about to run into the street, they just listen to you. So it's like that first time obedience thing, and then it's like from 6 to 12 is just coaching them, trying to give them life skills, whatever, and I mean correcting them a lot, and then you're done. At 13, it's over. They're not going to listen to literally anything you say. Well, at least, I mean, they will, but only if you've earned their respect. But there's no.
But it's like
You're like
more
coaching
rooted in
them.
their approaching you.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they're seeking you out versus you can just step in and be like, well, this is how you do it.
Right. Yeah, they are autonomous at that point, basically. And so what you are hoping to do is have built enough of a relationship that you are or the most trusted advisor in their life, but you can't really fix anything in them. or whatever. And so I don't know. I think it's been helpful for me to think about that, where it's like, obviously one of the difficult things is right now we have 3 kids in different stages or whatever. So you're having to parent differently for each of them, where it's like, you know, our 17-month-old is like throwing shit everywhere, and we're obviously trying to correct him, but we are a lot less aggressive about it than if our 5-year-old throws some shit.
Mm-hmm.
And by that I mean like bricks or whatever. And they're like,
Got a lot of bricks
They're like,
thrown around here.
well, honestly, that kid,
More bricks than we want.
he picks up so many things. Anyway, whatever. I just think it's an engaging, fun, hard, challenging, but like worthwhile thing to do. And I wish people would just like not have kids if they don't want to have kids, because then you make a lot of sad people, and or then you're weird around my kids, and I don't want my kids around weird, creepy parents, angry parents, to be like learning that, I don't know, there is such a thing as no love or whatever. I'm like, no, everybody loves people. They're like, wait, is it possible for parents to not like their kids? I'm like, no. I don't know.
This is a good.
I don't want you to like doubt our thing just because you see out in the world.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're too young to know the sadness of life. Anyway, I realize people could get really pissed about this because they're like, how dare you not accept how hard it is. And I recognize that it is really hard, and that sometimes people have kids that they weren't expecting, and it's cool that they're still trying to raise them. Everybody's theoretically doing their best. But it really bums me out, what feels like a majority of the people that I know are more just kind of ambivalent or frustrated with or whatever their kids, and they don't seem interested in making that better in a positive, helpful way. So it just kind of bums me out.
I think the thing that bums me out about it the most is I'm okay with people not knowing how to parent,
Well, of course, yeah.
or like kind of feeling like they're doing their best. It's the people who you can tell that either they just have weighed the option and they've decided it's not worth it to them to parent well. Like they're like, this is just bums me out. Like this is hard and I don't feel like doing it. Or the people who are so short-sighted where they're like, well, if my kid's sad now, how can that be good? And that's the part that that one bums me out, I think, more than anything, where it's like well, I'm going to get my kid McDonald's when they ask for McDonald's because they'll be sad. And I can't have a sad person. And I'm like, no, you're going to have a sad person.
Right.
Like people who don't know how to be disappointed are chronically disappointed.
Right.
And so it's like, I just think there's like this part of it where, on one hand, I feel sad for parents who don't get to experience the joy of parenting because they've created kids that are having a hard time. But then there's just the other part of it where it's like, I just feel so sad for those kids because those are the ones who end up in my office later, where they're like, well, you know, I want to go to college. Like, I want to take this coding class, but like, it's hard to get out of my bed and go do things because I don't know how to do anything. And I'm like, oh, well, you know, we could start doing things. And they're like, nah, it's just hard. Like, I'd rather not. And it's just kind of like, okay, well, and it's not like, and that's not even necessarily rooted in depression, right? That's not like I don't know how to motivate myself. It's you know, like they make the same decision that kind of the parents made, where it's just like, but it's just harder to do things the right way.
Right.
So like, I'd rather not. And it's just sad. Like we just kind of create this system. So I'm at the same page as you. I just wish people would not have kids if they're not ready to have them. But I also, you know, I always kind of zoom out to the societal thing where it's like, I think
Society doesn't do a lot to
Bluey.
support.
Yeah, Bluey, I think, hits the nail on the head. There's an episode, Past the Parcel.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite episodes of Bluey of all time.
My children don't watch TV, unlike your sensible, broken children. But sure, go ahead.
We love Bluey. But there's an episode called Past the Parcel where the premise of the game is there's this gift that's been wrapped like 10 times, or some mysterious number of times, and it's like musical chairs with the gift, and every time it stops you unwrap it and then you keep passing it. And one of the dads is like doing it, and he's like, wait, why is there a small gift in every layer? And they're like, well, you don't want anyone to be disappointed. And so he, at his birth, like when his child has a birthday, he's like, we're doing it my way. And there's just one big gift in the middle, and there's like kids screaming and crying everywhere, like while the party's happening. And all the parents are like, what are you doing, Pat? Like,
Yeah.
And he's like having a breakdown by the end of it. But then at the end of it, all the kids like adopt that version of the game because they're like, oh, like it feels so much better to earn it, like by waiting and being patient, and you get to be excited for the person who got something cool.
Yeah.
But the line is like, oh, we're he's like, we're raising a nation of squibs. Like it's just like we just have like these soft people who like, because we're so interested in constantly like meeting their need that they never know how to be disappointed. And so, and I think a big part of that is parents burn out and kids don't know how to be disappointed, and then it's just all sad. And so like there is kind of this part of it where it's like, I joke that I like disappointing my kids a little bit. Not because I relish in their suffering, but I feel so proud of my kids when they're disappointed a lot of the time, because they'll like sit and they'll feel an emotion and we'll talk about it and identify what they're feeling. And then they'll like be like, well, you know, I'll ask them, well, what can you do to deal with it? And they'll kind of process through it. And then when they actually get what they wanted next time, it like, I can tell that it means a lot to them.
Yeah.
Like when we go to McDonald's, they asked 10 times and I said no 9 times. And then on the 10th time we actually end up going, they're like, this is great. Like, this is such a special thing. And
Our
I
version
waited
of that
for
is Chick-fil-A ice cream.
Yeah.
They ask every single time, and I only give
It's
it to
always
them
no.
maybe every 10th time. And
Yeah.
then they're like, oh shit! And actually, we actually had their grandmother was floored because she's like, wait, they just share one ice cream? And we're like, well, they're tiny. They don't need literally any ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, but they're like okay with it? And it's like,
That's the only way they're getting
that's
it.
the only way they're getting it. They're thrilled. She's like, well, all these other kids, like they all have to have their own ice cream and their own whatever. Like even at Chipotle, so we all share one bowl at this point, all 5 of us. Well, actually, we get some more supplemental stuff too now, but it's like kids they don't care. They don't know unless you tell them everybody needs to have their own thing because that's what I want or whatever. It's just funny. It's like there's so many things that I guess one way that I would say it to your thing about disappointment is like there's so many things that kids don't know to be mad or disappointed about unless you show them really young. And then if you can just, so like we don't let our kids have sugar until they're 2, and we don't let them watch anything on TV until they're 2 or whatever. And that's not like oh, aren't we great, but it's for us so that
They don't know what they're missing.
they don't know what they're freaking missing, so they're not going to ask for it until they start to ask for it. And then by the time they're asking for it, they're able to approach it from a lot healthier, like, well, obviously I don't need it. I've spent my entire life not getting to watch TV, but can I please watch 10 minutes of Frozen? And every time I let them, they're like, oh, shit, we're watching 10 minutes of Frozen.
Yeah.
Instead of, we have a lot of kids who have, like, they get an hour a day. And so then it's more a story of, wait, I only got 50 minutes today? Go to hell, Mom! And you're like, I would much rather everything I give to them be a thrill.
Yeah.
Than I just am constantly having to take things away because I've given them so much so early that they just are constantly disappointed because it's like, I'm supposed to get my own ice cream. I'm supposed to get to watch an hour a day. These are the rules. Rather than like, the rules are you get nothing. And now I've
And then
and
through
now I've
my
given you
benevolence, I have
Yeah.
presented
And they're
a
like,
shared ice cream.
thank you, God, for giving me Frozen and like 4 bites of ice cream. It just helps me, and it makes your kids better because they're just less annoying, I think. But I don't know. I suppose we'll see. And of course, those things get harder. So our third kid has already had sugar, even though he's not that age, because he's sitting there yelling, and I'm like, "This is our fault. You live in a world where you see it. I was
Yeah.
able to shield the other ones."
Yep.
I'm like, fine. And he's like, ha, 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 this is what I always deserve. Oh, no.
Yeah.
But, yeah, anyway, I just think it's fun. I mean, it's hard, but it's fun. And it's a good way to, like, put my life in perspective, I think. Like, if I was a single dude living in Los Angeles, trying to run a YouTube channel or like trying to be a screenwriter or whatever, I just think I'd be a lot less happy because I would just be sitting there thinking about myself and my work all the time. And I think it would make my work shittier too, probably. But anyway.
I agree. Children are little treasures, and sometimes I say it and think to myself, I don't know if I can totally believe it in this very small moment. But I do honestly think that like kids are the freaking best. Like I love seeing the world through their eyes, and I love being able to like grow little strong people. And last night somebody was in my house being very weepy about how they just want their daughter to know that they were like super well loved. And I was admiring them. I was also like, you're being a lot. Like, I'm just trying to have a drink.
How old is this daughter?
Like 3. And I was just like, but I had this moment of like, but I respected him as a parent a lot in that moment.
It was a boy crying?
Yeah.
Gross.
So, but I respected him a lot in that moment because I was like, because when we go back to that parent you were talking about, where they're like, oh, my kids just suck. I think that there was like this starch contrast in that where I was just kind of
contrast.
Starch, yeah, it's starchy. It's high in carbohydrates. Yeah,
contrast.
Stark contrast where thanks Jordan. There was
English
a stark
major.
contrast where I was like, you know what? I had spent a lot of time talking to my wife about this after this person left. But I was like, there's a lot of things that I don't click with on this person, like on a personal level. But I really admire how much he loves his kids. Sure. And like, and at the end of the day, I think he's going to have some really great kids who grow up to be really good people because he just like, he loves them a lot and he respects them a lot. And he might make mistakes like everyone's going to make when they're parenting, but like, right. I just kind of was like, I was just having a moment of feeling a little refreshed, though he was being very weepy at like 12 o'clock at my house. And I was like, dude, I know you're a teacher and you got nothing to do tomorrow. I gotta go to work. You gotta stop crying in my kitchen.
As you record a podcast at 10:30 a.m.
I went to work before this.
I know.
But yeah, I was just kind of like, this is nice that this dude just like really.
Yeah, I would
loves
much rather
and cares
you
about his
err
kids.
on that side.
Yeah, I mean it was still too much, but I admire
because
it.
I do think the people that just give their kids everything they want are not actually operating very often out of a place of love. I mean, sure,
it's
they
discomfort reduction.
Exactly. It's sort of more for you.
Yeah,
I think is like, well, this is going to make today easier. Is if you just eat the ice cream and watch Frozen and shut the hell up.
Or I feel guilty not giving it to you.
Yeah,
my mother-in-law is that way, where she's like, but I have to give this to them because they want it.
Right.
Like I'll feel so sad if they're sad because I made them sad. I'm like, you didn't make them sad. The world made them sad.
Yeah.
And you can just love them really well.
Yeah, you can just do. You
can just be like, this is just how the world works, my guy. I'm so sorry, but I love you so much. Like, let's go play a game and take our mind off of it.
I think it requires more investment from you to have to deal with the disappointment of them not getting the ice cream and then offering them some kind of alternative or not, I guess, but just trying to like, it's more work to not give your kids ice cream all the time. Mm-hmm. I think in the long run, it's less work because then they're not so shitty all the time. But
it requires some emotional labor to do it.
Yeah. So I would much rather that than the person who's just like hyper strict with their kids because they hate their kids and again they're Parisian saboteurs. But yeah, I like kids.
They're dope.
I
got a couple.
You got 3, my guy.
What?
We both got 3. Who would have thought? And then of course, of all of us, the high school bros, who would have thought Dave would be the childless one?
He is maidenless.
Maidenless. Devin and Jordan over here cranking them out. Let's get out of here.
Let's do it.